Today, we're talking about interstitial cystitis. This is often something that women are diagnosed with after struggling for years, sometimes even decades, with chronic UTI symptoms. Here, I'm talking specifically urinary urgency, burning while peeing, usually weird smelling pee, maybe described as sickeningly sweet or fruity smelling, or acetone or fermented. And even white cloudy pee when it's not tinged with blood. And there's a reason for all of that. I walked through these symptoms myself for the first time. Just a really brief backstory on me before we get into this. Um, when I stopped hormonal birth control, within about 2 weeks, I developed my first ever UTI. And originally, urine cultures were positive. After a while, they turned negative, and I still had insane symptoms. At some point, I'll explain why it is that when we're prescribed antibiotics, we tend to get symptom relief, when in fact, what's really going on is metabolic dysregulation caused by hormone imbalance in a non-resilient body that is stuck in fight or flight. These are the three pillars of interstitial cystitis. These are the three pillars actually causing your flares. And today, I'm going to walk you through why this is true. We're going to start out with the hormone imbalance piece, because this one is the one that I think most women resonate most strongly with. They feel on some level that there's something going on with their hormones. And usually, estrogen or progesterone are blamed. Usually, interstitial cystitis shows up at major hormone shifts throughout our lives, whether that's entering puberty, getting pregnant, giving birth, so in that postpartum phase, and in the perimenopause menopause shift, when estrogen and progesterone production naturally begin to decline from the ovaries. And there's a very specific reason why I'm saying from the ovaries. And the reason for that is, at all of these major life transitions, this is an opportunity to uncover a deeper seated hormone imbalance, which is always the hormones associated with metabolism, aka energy production within the body. These are the hormones that make you tick: thyroid, insulin, and cortisol. Now, cortisol in particular is king or queen, is sovereign of the hormone hierarchy. Cortisol follows a natural daily rhythm. Upon rising, within about 30 minutes of when you wake up, depending on what time the sun rises, so a little bit dependent on time of the year, where you live, we would expect cortisol to reach its peak for the day. And then cortisol begins to drop off pretty dramatically until around 5 p.m. or so. And at this point, we've got kind of a slower decline. So you can imagine cortisol just like a mountain, basically, right? Where we've got steep rise, and then we've got kind of a little bit of a roll all the way until it plateaus throughout the night. We wind up in our plains with cortisol production in the evening between about 10 p.m. and 2 or 3 a.m. And then cortisol starts to rise again in preparation for waking you up, or supporting waking you up in the morning. Now, cortisol, why do I say cortisol is king, or cortisol is sovereign of the hormones? Because cortisol actually impacts how well thyroid hormone gets taken up from the bloodstream into the body cells, where it's able to be converted and used for mitochondrial support. So this is energy support within the cells at a cellular level. Many is so common, and I work with so many clients who are struggling with symptoms, classic simple symptoms of hypothyroidism, yet all of their blood work, and here I am not talking TSH, I'm talking actual thyroid hormones, all of their blood work indicates that they have sufficient thyroid hormone in the bloodstream. Why is that? It's it's a key indicator that that thyroid hormone is not getting sufficiently uptaken by the body cells. So there are additional ways to actually test cellular levels of thyroid hormone, and they don't involve a blood test. Now, that is beyond the scope of today's conversation. The key takeaway for today is that when cortisol rhythm becomes dysregulated, and I don't care if this winds up being high cortisol throughout the day, I don't care if this winds up being flatlined cortisol throughout the day, or if it's just dysregulated. So it's higher than it should be at times when it should be low, or lower than it should be at times when it should be high. So this dysregulated pattern, what this winds up doing is actually messing up our nervous system, messing up our body's ability. Now, nervous system dysregulation is a so overused term right now. I'm like intentionally not leading with that, because you can't do a Zoom sesh and get to a regulated nervous system. And you can't, for many, many women that are stuck, like I was one of these, stuck in type A, you can't think your way into a regulated nervous system. But the key takeaway is that when cortisol becomes dysregulated, this is kind of a different take on this whole nervous system regulation talk that is all over the place right now. When cortisol becomes dysregulated, it affects the body's ability to easily transition from fight or flight, so from our sympathetic nervous system state, to parasympathetic tone, that rest, digest, heal state. And as cortisol continues this dysregulation, its dysregulated rhythm, it becomes harder and harder to shift. And what winds up happening is we wind up in this feedback loop. So the nervous system dysregulation contributes to dysregulated cortisol levels, because it basically, if we look at our hormone control, it's from the brain, it's from the hypothalamus pituitary. There's always, if we look at any hormone axis in the body, hypothalamus here in the brain, pituitary here in the base of the brain, and then some other part of the body, adrenal, HPA axis for cortisol, adrenaline, all the things that the adrenals make. HPO, hypothalamus, pituitary, ovarian axis. HPT, hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid. So it all starts in the brain. And all of these axes get thrown off rhythm and start making things, start sending signals at the wrong time in the wrong rhythm for the organs of the body, the other endocrine organs of the body, to respond and actually make hormones at the right time. So then it's like we wind up not knowing whether we're coming or going, first of all. And then all of these symptoms start to pop up because we've got a nervous system that's dysregulated. All of our hormone axes are dysregulated. And our body is struggling to make energy because of all of this dysregulation. We're struggling to make energy. And one of the ways this shows up is interstitial cystitis. Now, here's what I know. Many women struggling with IC, urinary urgency, and all of the things associated with it, the burning while peeing, the cloudy pee, the smelly pee, those are not your only symptoms. Most of the time, you are also actively struggling with brain fog or migraines or headaches of some sort. You're struggling with fatigue. You're tired at weird times of the day, and then you wake up at sometime between 1 and 3, usually with your heart racing. You have night sweats. You have times during the day where your palms just sweat, and it's like, who even know we had sweat glands in the palms? You wind up like weight gain is another one. All of these are just symptoms of a body in crisis. And how I work with clients is specifically on informing you what's really going on. So we go deeper into what is really going on by actually looking at your blood work, basic CBC panels, and things that you already have, not additional blood work, to see, okay, what is this saying about your current nutrition state? Are you getting all of the necessary nutrients that are needed for a body to make cortisol? Then tying in this nervous system piece, and I actually use a technique that bypasses the thinking mind. Because what I know as a type A woman myself is that you cannot think your way into parasympathetic state. You cannot think your way into rest, digest, heal. It's not possible. I tried it for decades and it didn't work. I was at a point where I'd pretty much given up hope. And a friend of mine told me, okay, you've got to try this particular modality called spinal flow. And she was right. This particular modality bypasses the thinking mind. It communicates directly with the nervous system through gentle light touch to remind the body that, hey, there is another pathway. And then over time, what winds up happening is we wind up with new neural pathways that enable an easy switch between fight or flight and that rest, digest, heal pathway. And it just becomes easier and easier to flip the switch and get over into rest, digest, heal over time. And in addition to that, because once again, I see a lot of times when you're struggling with IC, you're at a state where you're also struggling with mast cell activation, whether you know it or not. Why do I say that? Mast cells are part of the immune system in a body struggling with dysregulated cortisol rhythm. Mast cells become hypersensitive. And when that happens, lots of foods become triggers. And it can exacerbate both the digestive tract, particularly where it feels like you wind up feeling histamine or raw after meals. And it can also like spill over into the bladder. And there's about a million other things that this does. Um, one of the primary things that happens in a hypothyroid body, and again, this can be where your thyroid hormone levels are beautiful when you look at the bloodstream, but you're still at a cellular level hypothyroid. One of the things that happens in a hypothyroid body is it becomes more susceptible to infections of all sorts. And this is one of the reasons why when women are struggling with chronic UTIs, it's because we have this dysregulation. We're struggling at some level with insulin resistance, whether known or unknown. Over time, a lot of women will actually see their HbA1c go up, even if they're not yet diabetic. It's like almost like an indicator of prediabetes. They'll see that start to go up. That's contributing to some of the weight gain. It's contributing to a lot of the symptoms, like specifically that smelly pee. There's a reason for that in an insulin resistant body. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, right. One of the symptoms of one of the common symptoms of hypothyroidism. So in addition to just being more prone to infection, is actually an altered stomach acidity. So you wind up struggling with heartburn, you wind up struggling with indigestion, you wind up struggling with feeling like you can properly digest your food. And then it also, like downstream of that, because then our elimination pathways, both bladder, both urine, and also feces are impacted as well. And so we wind up with this kind of another feedback loop affecting the bladder. So what I've done, I've actually got multiple ways of working through this with women. One of those is a virtual path with IC Freedom, where we look at these three pillars. So we are doing a deep dive into the hormones and how to rebalance hormone rhythm. We're doing a deep dive into how to kind of kickstart and get your metabolism back online and reset. And then also how to do this, what to do for nervous system support. And this definitely requires, regardless of where you live, This requires hands-on support from a spinal flow practitioner near you or a network spinal practitioner near you. More info on the virtual program, I See Freedom, is below. And then the second way women work with me is actually one-on-one. It's 6 months unlimited spinal flow sessions coupled with I See Freedom and one-on-one consults. So more info about both programs in the link below. Hope this helps.